Good morning, everyone. Today we're here to check out a brand new video from Popcross Studios, Vigilants Season 1, Episode 3. Yeah, damn it, he said the name in the last two episodes. It's Ogimaa Knight, I think that's how you pronounce it. Authentic Little Monster. Now let's hop in and see what we can learn in the third part of Episode 1. At least that's how I'm
Being
describing
your
it.
authentic self in the modern world seems harder and harder to do. Many don't even realize that they've never taken the time to learn who their authentic self is, or
Ooh,
that
that's
this
kinda true.
journey in itself can take a lifetime. Some people may even claim they've found their true self, but it's actually just a mask built from other people's expectations and influence.
A little
This
facade.
is why it can be so appealing or possibly repulsive to the ego when a truly authentic person crosses your path. They either show you an inspiring example of how you too can be the person you feel called to be, or they trigger a deep resentment pulled out by the fact that a person isn't even conscious of the self they're repressing.
Ooh,
One of
that's
these
nice.
effortlessly authentic people is Ogimaa Knight,
Ogimaa.
Augie for short. He's from the island country of Unitalia, home of some of the most
Okay, Augie.
unique Vigilance League fighters alive. While many of the 22.2% of people in this world are born with powers or develop them in early childhood, even powerless people can gain abilities through the creatures in Unitalia. You see, this
Bionites.
island is full of empowered animals called Bionites.
Yep.
They were once said by the indigenous people of the island, the Malayo, to be the spiritual protectors of the people. When someone tunes the energy and vibrations of their body to be at one with nature and sets the intention to get Mother
can form a
Nature's
bond.
help, a Bionite would find them and make a bond with them, granting that human ally the same abilities as the creature. When matching someone's
impressive.
vibration, a Bionite can physically fuse with their partner and transform parts of their body, upgrading them into a superpowered being. If a true, authentic bond is made, then the creature will spend the rest of its life connected to their partner. Unfortunately, Augie is one of the very few people in his country to still have one of these genuine bonds. And worse still, he was
really?
often looked down upon for having it. You see, these
Oh, of
bonds are
course.
very difficult to form in the modern day because the average person is so disconnected from nature. Around 100 years ago, the
That's a
residents of this
shame.
island were accepted into other countries' Vigilance League tournaments, bonding with their Bionite partners and trouncing many of the world's best fighters. This brought more and more people to the island, and it became more and more modernized, and the more
Wait, if that's the case, wouldn't it actually be more that people would want to become more attuned with nature? Or something to that degree? If they saw that these natural bonds were so much more powerful than these powers people were born with, huh? Really gets you thinking.
this happened, the fewer people were actually able to make bonds with Bionites. An island that temporarily produced the greatest vigilant fighters alive dwindled to being barely on the Global League's radar. Things did seemingly
That
turn
kind of
around,
sucks.
though, when a company called the Averitt Corporation, who had their fingers in many different industries, developed a device called a bond band. One could wear this on their wrist and fake the elevated vibration that drew Bionites to a person to bond with them. These went to
That's
market
not
on an
good.
expensive subscription basis, and suddenly thousands of people were finding Bionite partners. There were public glitches in the early days of these devices, creatures spontaneously realizing their connection was fake and attacking their partner.
It's a fraud!
But Averitt
Attack!
had more than enough money to cover up these in the media until they made a more refined version of their product. They did eventually get it to a place where it was working mostly glitch-free, and Unitalia was once again back on the world stage, with many contenders using these devices, making artificial Bionite bonds, and joining the Global Vigilance League. There were still those, especially amongst the Malayo people, that criticized the use of these bond bands, and pointed out that none of the Vigilants using them were nearly as effective as those who'd made bonds with the creatures naturally. But
True.
these voices were generally drowned out to the public ear by the booming vocal promises of the Averitt Corporation that people born without powers could come here and get them for the right price. Augie was not one of the
And how much is that price? It's maybe $99.99?
people to come from overseas.
No, wait, that's only $100. I meant $9.99.99 and 1,000. I forgot a zero.
Though. He was born and raised on Unitalia. His mother Oila, before her passing, had been a member of the Malayo people and had been bonded to a creature herself called Hodera. He was a two-legged
Hodera.
lizard with sturdy yellow and gray flesh, blue icy crystals emerging from his body, and a broad-tipped tail. Augie's father, Noah, was an immigrant from Canada who'd come to study the animals and indigenous people of the island to write a book, but had fallen in love with Ogimaa and stayed.
You know, actually, got a quick question. Where exactly on Earth would you say this island is placed? I doubt it's in the Atlantic Ocean, so probably more likely in the Pacific, considering there's a lot of islands over there. Oh, so the people of Unitalia are Pacific Islanders in a way. Interesting.
Augie grew up with a foot in both the modern, innovative world of Unitalia's big city, while also standing firmly in the spiritual ways of the indigenous people. He went to school with some kids from his mom's village, but they all tended to be quiet about their people's ways around the big city kids.
Makes sense.
Except for Augie, of course. Augie was constantly vocal about how people should connect more with nature and how hiking through the forests surrounding the city was far more fun than any video game could be. He openly spoke about how he could hear the spirits of his ancestors guiding his life path, and how one day he'd make an authentic bond with a Bayou Knight and become a global Vigilance League champion that showed everyone how much better making a real bond was.
And just by this artwork, looks like it does happen not the way he was expecting it to.
Most kids made fun of Augie. Many saw him as arrogant and boisterous and attention-seeking. One student that had gone through a few grades with him, Akaru Inoue, had seen Augie as this as well. Until the day Augie came to school with what was apparently now his Bayou Knight partner, Hodera. At the time, Augie was only 12 years old, and to own a bond band, you had to be at least 13, so nobody in the city had seen a kid under that age with a Bayou Knight. On top of that, though, Akaru was astounded to learn that Hodera had bonded with Augie after his mother had died a few weeks ago.
Called it.
Augie hadn't missed any school for this or anything, and when asked
Sorry for your mother's passing, but damn it, why did I have to call it?
why he wasn't sad she was gone, he just said, "What do you mean she's not gone? Her body just stopped working." Most people acted like he was
I'm sorry. I've heard a lot of statements about people's reaction to death and all that. What the hell are the Unitalia people talking about it with that? The body just stopped walking? I mean, medically speaking, that's not wrong, but scientifically or spiritually, that's... Oh my god, that is a brick to the skull.
delusional, and his teacher told him that it was too dangerous to have a Bayou Knight running around the city if someone didn't have a bond band to control it. But he protested as usual that real bonds are stronger than artificially made ones. Even though Hodera acted exactly as Augie instructed through that day, people gossiped that the only reason he'd been able to make a bond with it was because his mother had had a bond with the creature first. But Akaru knew that didn't line up with how Bayou Knights worked.
I mean, that would
his
be a
father was
bonus,
an executive for the Averitt Corporation and had moved to Unitalia from Japan soon after Akaru and his twin sister Junko were born. Because his dad had a place in the company, Akaru knew that he and his sister would be getting bond bands when they turned 13, despite the exorbitant prices for most people to keep one nowadays.
Seriously,
He'd
how
then
much
be
are
able
they?
to go off and find his own Bayou Knight. But now he was starting to wonder if he even needed the band for that. He mentioned Doggy to his father, who just told Akaru the same spiel you'd expect from an Averitt employee, that people who bond with the creatures naturally are putting the lives of others in danger by having an unreliable connection, unlike those who use the bond bands. His sister Junko echoed her father's sentiment and said that Augie Kid was a loud...
Okay, I actually got a good question about these Bayou Knights. First off, can they evolve, grow, or change in any way? Because if they can, these things are like a badass version of Pokemon and Digimon. If not, I mean, still awesome, just not as awesome, but that's me.
Annoying menace, and Akaru shouldn't think about him too much. Even still, there was something about Augie that made Akaru want to be around him and figure him out. He ignored this urge for some time and just watched as Augie continued to be his loud and odd self until Akaru and Junko turned 13, got their own bond bands, and soon enough, their own Bayou Knights.
Okay.
Unlike Augie, they'd been able to go out and choose the one they wanted by tuning their band to the right frequency for it. Junko proudly claimed that she'd be fighting on the school's vigilance team with her flame-spitting winged serpent Bayou Knight, Ahimonyo. And Akaru less enthusiastically followed her, but all the while felt weird about his Bayou Knight partnership. His creature was called Mahuta, It looked like a flying manta ray whose body could convert into mist. It couldn't let him change his entire body into mist when bonded, but it could let him change parts to avoid damage from an opponent, and could let him fly.
That could be useful.
But he never felt the bond with it was right. He'd seen how Ogi and Hodera were together, and it was as though they deeply loved each other. Mahuta often just seemed confused by Akaru, and he didn't feel any real connection with the animal. One day after school, Akaru and Junko were headed home with their Bayunites, and they came across Ogi playing with Hodera. Junko approached and challenged Ogi to a battle. She wanted to prove to him how much better a fighter he could be if bonded properly, as she called it, with a Bayunite. Ogi eagerly accepted, and he said that he and Hodera could take on both Junko and Akaru at the same time.
Yeah,
Akaru
2v1.
was still curious about Ogi and had wanted to try and get to know him, but in that moment he felt his and his family's honor was being threatened, so he agreed to join the fight. When Bayunite Vigilants...
I'm sorry, the moment he said honor, my brain just went... Okay, I was going to try and find a clip from Avatar The Last Airbender of Zuko yelling honor, but I couldn't find it. Sorry.
fight in a battle, they can either be bonded with their partner, stay separate and command the creatures fighting, or switch between the two states. The risk of being not bonded is that the Vigilant has no powers on their own, so they're very weak and open to attacks. The reason many people in the modern day will do this, though, is that it's perceived that Bayunites are more powerful on their own than when bonded with their human.
And it's the other way
clearly
around,
didn't seem to be the
isn't it?
case with Ogi. He and Hodera just seemed to elevate each other when bonded. Junko and Akaru left their creatures unbonded right off the start, and Ogi, united with Hodera, came in like an icy train. His arm was spewing beams of ice while Hodera's tail sprung up out of his shoulder, swinging like a boulder on a rope. Within a minute of the fight starting, Ogi and Hodera had incapacitated both his opponent's Bayunites without doing much harm to them, and froze Akaru and Junko's feet to the ground. He stood between them and said, "See, don't you want a proper bond with a Bayunite now?
Yeah,
Anyone
come on.
can do it with enough practice. Just gotta remind your head that humans are supposed to be a part of nature, not trying to control it." Junko flipped out at him until he used his powers to dissolve the ice around her and Akaru's feet. She grabbed her Bayunite and stomped off. But Akaru stayed and asked Ogi if he...
Literally just did the whole South Park thing of, screw you guys, I'm going home. Nah, screw you, home.
he could really show him how to make a better bond with his Bayunite. Once again, Ogi eagerly agreed, seemingly instantly forgetting that Akaru had just tried to fight him. He went with Ogi out into the woods, and the first thing Ogi told him to do was take off his bond band. Akaru didn't want to because he was scared of what Mahuta might do, but Ogi promised to protect him. Taking a step away from Mahuta, Akaru took off his band and shut it off. Quickly, the creature lurched back in the air and stared at Akaru. Then, it hissed at him and shot right for him. But Ogi stepped in front, united with Hodera, stopping the creature. It calmed slightly as Ogi scratched under its chin. It still snarled at Akaru, but then flew off into the woods. Akaru was...
If that thing could speak English, it would be doing like that Asdeath movie scene of, "You lied to me."
Furious, but Ogi told him that Mahuta was clearly not the Bayunite he should be bonded with. That when he fixed his connection with nature and developed a genuine vibration in alignment with a Bayunite, the right one would find him if he set the intention to form a bond. Ogi told Akaru to come with him twice a week for a hike after school. No phones, no bond...
You know, I guess if anything, you could just wear the bond band but leave it turned off. That way it would give people the illusion that you're using it. But in reality, you don't need the damn thing.
Bands, and they just appreciate the fun to be had out in the wild. Akaru agreed, despite the scolding he got from both his father and sister. His father was furious that he wasn't using the band that most kids would be ecstatic to have, and his sister told him that Ogi was a little monster who was going to infect his mind with nonsense. Akaru found it so hard to go against his family's influence, but also saw that being around Ogi made it so much...
Okay, this actually is kind of like the Zuko family. You got the king, the father, and the princess, the sister, talking about all their stuff, while in reality...
easier to be the kind of person he really wanted to be. Those days they'd spend in the woods would feel like, and quite literally be, a breath of fresh air from the overwhelm of the modern world. Being around Ogi and accepting his odd, loud attitude, while also being accepted himself, made Akaru feel naturally much more chill. Eventually,
That's
though, he
good.
felt compelled
That's
to
good.
ask Augie why he was helping him so much. To which Augie gave a simple reply. Well, I want to help everyone, but you're the only person who's ever let me help. He then went on to say, I can't force people to get as good at being alive as I am.
He's trying to
But
be
when
an All
Hogera and
Might.
I become the Vigilance League World Champions, all the people in the world who want help will be able to hear my voice and I'll teach everyone how to live better. It did sound a bit
Love it.
cocky, but having gotten to know Augie, Akaru genuinely believed that his new friend could help a lot of people. He thanked Augie for everything he was doing and then settled into a moment of peaceful silence. Until a creature stirred in the forest nearby. Stomping out of the woods was a broad, 4-foot-tall stone-skinned golem with a thick clubbed tail. It rumbled the ground as it walked, and Akaru thought he should have been
That was his
scared,
fault, no?
but he wasn't. At all. The creature looked directly into his eyes as it approached, and it was as though he'd known it for his entire life. Augie suddenly tapped the back of Akaru's legs to get him to kneel down, then raised his arm, holding his palm facing forwards towards the creature. It got close enough to have the warm breath from its nostrils snort against his skin. After a moment of pause, it leaned forward and pressed its forehead against his hand, then began merging into Akaru's body.
That's how you do it, boys! That's how you do
His
it!
durability had just increased 100-fold, and his feet now seemed like they were connected to every stone within 100 miles. When the merge completed, both his arms had been turned to stone, and he ecstatically looked at Augie, who just asked, Now how does it feel to have a real proper bond with a Bionite, buddy?
It feels glorious! Okay, you know what? That actually allows me to actually pivot into something good. Let me know down in the comments below if you guys were in this universe and if you've already created your own Bionite, and let me know about it. And like, what would it look like? Its typing, elementals, all that stuff. Let me know down in the comments below of this episode. Hell, of all these episodes.
If you enjoyed this third...
Oh, and that's the end of it. Alright everyone, well I hope you enjoyed today's video. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Link to the original will be in the description below, and I'll see all of you next time when we flick back on. Till then, this is Fox, signing out. Peace.